Welcome to the Art Lady's home. For today's creative cooking, I have just taken out of the oven this Mediterranean egg bake. And I got the idea because I absolutely love spinach pie, and a lot of the ingredients in this is similar to spinach pie, but I'm not going to be using the phyllo dough. And I'm going to be combining it with some goat cheese that has sun-dried tomatoes and basil. So we're kind of combining that spinach pie flavor with some tomato basil goat cheese. And it's going to come out amazing. So I can't wait to taste it. And I'm going to show you how simple and easy it is to make. I'm preheating the oven to 350 while I cut up the onions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I roughly cut up and diced one small to medium sweet onion. This was the Vidalia, and it's about 1/4 of an inch size, you can see, compared to the knife blade. And the garlic. Now I'm going to go ahead and I've used 1/2 bulb of garlic, and I'm going to chop that up fine, and I'm going to saute that in a saute pan with some butter. I'm using a butter alternative. If you don't want to use dairy, I'm just using an earth balance. Here's the garlic. The garlic is diced up fine, and I'm going to add that to the onions. And I'm just going to lightly cook these. I have it on a medium, on a 5. And I'm just going to lightly brown them. I'm using 8 ounces of pre-washed spinach. And what I do is I take a handful at a time, and I kind of just grab it and roll it, and then I shred it like this. I'm just cutting it down in slices. And then I'm just going to throw it into the onion pan as the onions are cooking. That way this condenses down a little bit. The onions started to brown, and that's when I added my spinach. And I'm reducing the heat now to a 2. And you can see the spinach wilts really quickly. So I'm going to do this for the whole bag of spinach. I'm going to use 12 eggs, and I'm just going to crack them in the bowl. I'm going to add a teaspoon of basil. This is just dried basil leaves. And I'm going to also add some pepper. So I'm going to grind it up and use 1/2 teaspoon of that. There's the pepper. And I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now you can omit the salt or use to taste on your own eggs, you know, when they come out. But for now I'm just going to put in 1/2 teaspoon, this to blend a bit. Now, I have a 16-ounce container of sour cream, and I'm going to use 1/2 of that, so that's 1 cup of sour cream. Now I'm adding 2/3 of shredded Parmesan, and you can use fresh Parmesan as well. I'm not going to blend it with the beaters. And the spinach mixture, let me show you what it looks like. And this is a 10-inch saute pan. The spinach mixture has condensed down quite a bit. So I'm going to add that now to my eggs. This is cooling a bit. And the last thing I'm going to do is add the goat cheese. Then I have a package of goat cheese, and this is sun-dried tomatoes and basil. Now, of course, if you don't have the sun-dried tomato basil kind, just add a little bit more basil and you can throw in some sun-dried tomatoes, or omit that if you'd like yourself. It's up to you. Let me show you what this looks like. It's got quite a bit of basil. I'd add another, either fresh or another half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of basil. This has got quite a bit of basil in it. So now I'm going to add this. Get all the little seasonings on the bottom here. And that was a 4 ounce. I'm going to lightly stir that. Now, of course, you can add any other cheeses you want to this if you want to add your own cheese combinations. Even black olives would be good, but I don't think I have any more. I think my son used them all yesterday. But black olives would be delicious in here too. I'm using a 9 by 11 baking dish. It's a glass baking dish. And I'm just going to place some olive oil on the bottom. And that's probably half a teaspoon. And I'm just rubbing it all over the edges just so it doesn't stick. I'm not going too far up because I don't want this to burn in my dish. I'm going just under the top line for when this expands and puffs up. There. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my egg mixture. Well, it looks and smells amazing. I'm going to now put it in the oven and I'm going to bake it between 15 and 18 minutes, just until the top starts setting up. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some slices of fresh tomato on top so they can kind of just bake there. And I'll sprinkle on some seasonings on them as well, but I'll show you that stage as I'm doing that. Meanwhile, I'm going to be slicing up this tomato. And I have a small one also from my garden here that I'm going to use. I sliced up the tomatoes, and the ones from my garden look amazing. They're more meaty. They have more of the flesh than the opened areas and seeds. I believe what I planted was Better Boy tomato. Now what I'm going to do is kind of just remove some of this moisture because I don't want all of this to get into the eggs. And I'm doing this while the eggs are cooking. Some of these are just loaded with water or juice. Now what I'm going to do is just lightly salt them. And I've just sprinkled some basil on top right here, some more of my ground basil. As soon as the casserole is, firm to touch on the top, then I'll just place these on. I just don't want these to sink into the casserole. This was about 15 minutes. I actually forgot to time it. But it's setting up on the outside and it's set up on the crust area here, but not on the inside. So now I'm going to go ahead and place my tomatoes along here. I'm going to kind of keep it airy and small on the center because I want that to cook a lot better. So I'm mainly bringing it toward my edges. That way, these won't overcook on the top. I'm trying to put the thicker parts near the edges. Let me move this over a little bit more here. And then I'm just going to put a few of the small ones down the middle. Oh, this one's a little, well, that was the thicker end. Let me do it like that. And then I'm going to move this a little bit over. And then just the little ones right in the middle here. 2, 3, there. So now it's going to go back in the oven. I just cooked it for another almost 20 minutes. And you want to make sure that the center is firm when you press in, and then when you stick a fork in, you want to make sure that the egg is cooked. And I can see that mine is pretty firm. So I'm just going to kind of hide that, put it back. And I'm going to let it cool for a minute, and then I'll slice it up and serve it. It smells absolutely delicious. And I even got a little bit of brown coming on the crisp on the corners here, and it looks really beautiful. Let me see if I can flip it so you can see the bottom. The bottom is just like a light golden brown. And I did have my oven set on convection bake. And that seems to circulate the air better and cook the centers. So basically for your oven, because every oven's different and depending on your altitude, you want to just make sure your center's done. So for cook time, total cook time that I had this in was, total cook time was 38 minutes. I had it in 18 minutes in the beginning and then 20 minutes after. If you use a little bit bigger pan, the egg is going to be thinner, and so it's going to cook faster. So you have to adjust it to the size of pan you're using, and your and where you live and how your oven cooks. Let's see how this piece comes out. Usually the first one doesn't come out so great. And there it is. Let me show you the side. So it has, ooh, we're steamy still. It's set up really well, but yet still moist. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. I'll tip it to the side here so I can focus it. It is still pretty moist. You can see it on my finger. So you don't want it to dry out. That's important. But you want it firm enough so that it's actually cooked. But there is the first piece right there. So that looks amazing. Here's a close-up as I eat this, and it is absolutely delicious. It has a really great flavor of the goat cheese. And I really think that that is important if you're going to be making this. Feta cheese has a different taste. And if you love feta, use feta. But if you like goat cheese, this is really flavoring this. And it's absolutely delicious with the basil. And it has that strong taste of basil as well. So it's really packed with lots of flavors. And it's absolutely delicious. I'm not eating it with any kind of sauces. And my 16-year-old surprisingly just used a very little bit of hot sauce. He usually douses everything with hot sauce. And he just used a little bit to let the flavors come through. And he even went for seconds. And this is great. You can even make it in advance. Just don't put the, put it into the dish and bowl, store it overnight, and then just cook it in the morning if you, if you don't have a lot of time. And that way it's already mixed up and made. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually dice it up a little bit and freeze some of them so that when I start back to work, I have some egg already ready for me.